The holographic display flickered with a montage of human achievements, primitive rocket launches, early computer prototypes, grainy images of first contact attempts. Each image was accompanied by a patronizing commentary that dripped with alien condescension. Kaleth's crystalline body pulsed with rhythmic contempt, each vibration translating into a wave of dismissive energy that washed over the human delegation. "Look," the ambassador continued, "their first interstellar probe took decades. Their earliest faster-than-light attempts were comically inefficient. Compare this to the Arcturian expansion, which conquered 3 star systems before humans had discovered electricity." Seated at the human table, Dr. Elena Rodriguez caught Ambassador Chen's almost imperceptible eye. A lifetime of diplomatic training had prepared them for this moment, a performance that would be remembered throughout galactic history. To the alien delegates, the humans appeared defeated, shoulders slightly slumped, postures suggesting resignation. But those who knew human body language would have noticed something else. A predatory stillness, like a coiled spring moments before unleashing its potential. Surrounding the central chamber, representatives from over 217 alien civilizations watched with a mixture of pity and barely concealed superiority. The Kindler delegation, serpentine beings whose scales reflected holographic light in mesmerizing patterns, clicked their forked tongues in synchronized derision. The Silicon Collective's quantum state representatives hummed with a frequency that translated to pure academic dismissal. Ambassador Kaleth continued, her voice a precise mathematical projection designed to carry maximum psychological impact. Humanity's greatest achievements are but footnotes in the grand narrative of galactic civilization. Their genetic engineering is primitive. Their quantum computing laughable. Their understanding of multidimensional physics is equivalent to an infant attempting calculus. What the alien representatives didn't see was the intricate network of communication happening beneath the surface. Microscopic quantum communicators, woven into the very fabric of the human delegation's clothing, were transmitting every single moment of this diplomatic humiliation. Each dismissive statement, each crystalline vibration of contempt, was being recorded with perfect fidelity. Not as a diplomatic record, but as a weapon. Dr. Rodriguez's fingers, seemingly resting casually on the table, were actually calibrating a series of quantum entanglement protocols. Ambassador Chen's seemingly nervous adjustment of his diplomatic pin was synchronizing a complex communication matrix that spanned multiple star systems. The humans were not just listening. They were preparing. In the observation galleries, younger members of various alien delegations watched with growing unease. Something about the human stillness felt wrong. It wasn't the defeat the senior diplomat saw. It was something else. A calculation. A plan. As Kaleth's holographic presentation reached its crescendo of human inadequacy, a subtle change began to ripple through the human delegation. It was almost imperceptible. A shift in atmospheric tension, a nearly quantum-level change in potential energy. The crucible was heating, and humanity was about to show the galaxy exactly what they were made of. Deep beneath the Atacama Desert, the true heart of humanity's revolution beat with a rhythm that would soon reshape galactic understanding. Project Prometheus was more than a research facility. It was a testament to human potential, a cathedral of innovation hidden from alien eyes. Dr. Aisha Nakamura moved between holographic displays that seemed to dance with impossible complexity. Each projection represented a breakthrough that would have made the Galactic Concordance's top scientists weep, technologies so advanced they bordered on the metaphysical. To her left, a quantum entanglement matrix hummed with potential. Unlike traditional alien communication networks that relied on massive infrastructure, this system could transmit information across galactic distances instantaneously, with encryption protocols that made current alien cybersecurity look like child's play. The breakthrough wasn't just in the technology. It was in the fundamental reimagining of communication itself. Dr. Marcus Chen, a quantum physicist with eyes that seemed to see multiple dimensions simultaneously, was calibrating something that looked deceptively simple. A small device, no larger than a human palm, capable of manipulating gravitational waves in ways that would rewrite fundamental physics textbooks across the galaxy. Containment field at 99.7% stability. He muttered, more to himself than to the team around him. We're ready for the next phase. The team of 300 scientists represented a microcosm of human potential. They weren't just researchers, they were revolutionaries. Each member had been carefully selected not just for their intellectual prowess, but for their ability to think beyond conventional boundaries. Genetic engineers worked alongside quantum physicists. Theoretical mathematicians collaborated with adaptive AI specialists. Neurological researchers shared insights with exotic matter theorists. A holographic display tracked global resource allocation. What appeared to be random industrial movements to outside observers was actually a meticulously planned global mobilization. Rare earth mining operations in Australia, synchronized with quantum research facilities in Japan. Experimental fusion reactors in the Nevada desert communicated with nanotechnology labs in Switzerland through encrypted quantum channels. Dr. Nakamura's personal terminal pinged, a seemingly innocuous message that was actually a complex communication protocol. The Galactic Council's recent diplomatic humiliation was more than just a moment of international tension. It was the final trigger for a plan decades in the making. Status report. She spoke softly, her voice picked up by quantum adaptive microphones that could isolate her communication from any potential interference. Around her, holographic displays began to shift. Complex algorithms that had been running in the background for years started to converge. Machine learning systems that had been quietly collecting and analyzing galactic communication patterns now began to compile their final reports. The human revolution wasn't going to be a sudden explosion. It was going to be a calculated, precise dismantling of everything the alien civilizations thought they understood about progress, potential, and power. Each scientist in the facility carried a weight beyond their immediate research. They were the vanguard of a species about to prove its worth, not through military might, but through an intellectual revolution that would make previous technological leaps look like mere child's steps. Dr. Chen looked up from his gravitational wave manipulator, a rare smile crossing his face. "We're ready," he said simply. And in that moment, the universe held its breath. The moment Ambassador Chen's words dissolved into the chamber's charged atmosphere, something unprecedented happened. The universal translation matrices, a technological marvel that had seamlessly bridged communication between 217 distinct alien civilizations for millennia, began to fracture. It started as a subtle shimmer, almost imperceptible. A brief flicker in the holographic displays, a microsecond of static that most delegates would have dismissed as a minor technical glitch. But for those paying attention, it was the first sign that something fundamental was changing. The Kindler delegation's serpentine representatives began to shift uncomfortably. Their Neuralink communication networks were experiencing unexplained interference, quantum-level disruptions that seemed to originate from the human delegation's communication devices. Ambassador Kaleth's crystalline form began to vibrate at an increasingly erratic frequency. The translation system struggled, her words becoming a distorted melody of contempt and confusion. "Impossible," she hissed, her universal translator breaking down into a cacophony of mathematical frequencies. "You cannot. Withdrawal is not a unilateral process requires." Her sentence fractured, each word becoming a separate entity, disconnected and meaningless. Around the chamber, the younger representatives of various alien civilizations leaned forward. Something was happening that defied every diplomatic protocol they had ever learned. The humans weren't just leaving, they were rewriting the very rules of galactic interaction. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, seated beside Ambassador Chen, activated a series of quantum communication protocols embedded in her diplomatic attire. To the alien delegates, she appeared to be making a simple, nervous adjustment of her sleeve. In reality, she was initiating a communication network that would simultaneously inform every human colony, research facility, and diplomatic outpost about the next phase of their plan. The communication wasn't just a message, it was a key. Quantum entanglement communicators hidden throughout the chamber began to resonate, not with sound, but with a frequency that seemed to exist between mathematics and pure potential. The very fabric of diplomatic space began to subtle shift, imperceptible to most, but devastating to those who understood its implications. "We are not asking permission," Ambassador Chen continued, his voice cutting through the growing confusion. "We are serving notice. Humanity's potential is not defined by your limited understanding. Our withdrawal is not an act of isolation. It is an act of transformation." The Silicon Collective's quantum state representatives began to fluctuate. Their computational matrices, designed to predict and analyze diplomatic scenarios with near-perfect accuracy, were generating error messages. Entire predictive models were collapsing, unable to process the variables introduced by human defiance. In that moment, something became clear to the alien delegates. This was more than a diplomatic withdrawal. This was the first tremor of a seismic shift that would redefine galactic civilization. The universal translation systems continued to break down, each fragment revealing more about the humans than any carefully constructed diplomatic language ever could. Fragments of mathematical potential, glimpses of technological horizons that existed beyond current comprehension. Ambassador Chen's final words hung in the air, no longer bound by traditional translation. "We are not leaving. We are becoming." And in the shocked silence that followed, the universe itself seemed to pause, waiting to see what would happen next. Within moments of the diplomatic withdrawal, a cascade of technological innovation erupted across human-controlled territories. It wasn't just research, it was a synchronized, global metamorphosis that would redefine the very concept of technological progress. In the orbital laboratories surrounding Mars, Dr. Samira Khan watched as her team's experimental quantum computation matrix began to solve problems that had stumped galactic scientific communities for centuries. Algorithms that previously required millennia of computational time were now being resolved in fractional seconds. Quantum stability at 99.8%, her assistant reported, his voice barely containing excitement. Computational models are, well, they're beyond our previous projections. The Mars terraformation project accelerated with impossible speed. Nanite swarms, each microscopic machine more complex than entire alien computational systems, began to transform the planetary environment. What would have taken centuries now progressed in hours. Atmospheric processors that had been running at a conservative 12% efficiency suddenly jumped to 97%, creating breathable pockets of atmosphere where none had existed before. Beneath the ice of Europa, another team of researchers activated a series of quantum resonance generators. The massive machines, disguised as standard planetary research equipment, began to manipulate the fundamental molecular structures of the Moon's subsurface ocean. It wasn't just research, it was cosmic gardening on a scale that defied comprehension. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, still wearing her diplomatic attire from the Galactic Council meeting, coordinated the global effort from a seemingly innocuous communication hub in Sao Paulo. To any external observer, it would look like a standard research coordination center. In reality, it was the neural network of humanity's greatest technological leap. Quantum entanglement communicators, devices so advanced they made current galactic communication technology look like primitive smoke signals, began to pulse with a rhythm that seemed to exist between mathematics and pure potential. Research facilities that had appeared independent now revealed themselves as part of a massive interconnected organism of innovation. On Jupiter's moons, experimental fusion reactors began to generate power that defied current scientific understanding. Energy outputs that should have been impossible according to every known physical law were now becoming standard operating procedure. The laws of physics weren't being broken. They were being rewritten. In the depths of the Atacama Desert, Project Prometheus shifted into its next phase. Quantum computers that had been running complex simulations for decades suddenly began to output results that looked less like computational data and more like blueprints for entire civilizational transformations. Dr. Aisha Nakamura observed the data streams with a calm that belied the magnitude of what was happening. "We're not just advancing," she muttered to herself. "We're evolving." Adaptive nanotechnological interfaces began to synchronize across multiple research platforms. What appeared to be independent research facilities were now revealing themselves as nodes in a global, no, an extra-global, network of innovation. Genetic engineering labs in Tokyo communicated instantaneously with quantum research facilities in Switzerland. Fusion reactor teams in Nevada shared real-time data with orbital research stations. The alien surveillance systems that had been monitoring human technological developments suddenly found themselves overwhelmed. Tracking algorithms that had worked perfectly for millennia began to generate nonsensical data. It was as if humanity had collectively decided to play an entirely different game, with rules that no one else understood. Every research facility, every colony, every experimental platform was now part of something larger. This wasn't just technological acceleration. This was a species-wide transformation that would redefine the very concept of progress. And they were just getting started. In the central computational hub of the Zarn Collective, something unprecedented began to happen. The neural predictive cores, massive quantum computational systems that had successfully mapped galactic events with 99.997% accuracy for over 10,000 years, started to generate error messages that defied logical comprehension. Prediction algorithm Z9, the most advanced forecasting system in known galactic history, began to break down. What had once been a perfectly calibrated machine of mathematical certainty now produced results that looked more like abstract art than scientific prediction. Chief computational analyst Vexnar watched in growing horror as entire sectors of predictive modeling collapsed. The holographic displays around him flickered with impossible data streams, quantum signatures that shouldn't exist, communication patterns that violated every known law of information transfer. "Impossible," he muttered, his multi-crystalline neural interfaces struggling to process the incoming data. Absolutely impossible. But it was happening. Across the galaxy, communication networks began to experience what would later be called the human anomaly. Trade routes that had been perfectly stable for millennia suddenly became unpredictable. Sensor arrays detected quantum fluctuations that seemed to emerge from nowhere and everywhere simultaneously. The Silicon Collective's most advanced tracking systems began to generate increasingly erratic reports. What appeared to be a simple human technological advancement was revealing itself to be something far more profound. A fundamental restructuring of how information could be transmitted, processed, and understood. On the research planet of Kexala, a team of alien scientists discovered that communication signals they had been tracking for decades had been subtly altered. Not destroyed or intercepted, but transformed. It was as if humanity had found a way to exist between the traditional understanding of communication and something entirely new. Diplomatic communication channels that had been stable for centuries began to experience unexplained disruptions. Not aggressive interventions, but subtle modifications that made previous communication protocols seem laughably primitive. The Arcturian long-range sensor arrays first detected the anomaly. A series of quantum signatures that didn't just break the rules of known physics. They seemed to exist in a state beyond traditional understanding. Mathematical models that had taken centuries to develop began to show critical failures when attempting to analyze these new data streams. What made the anomaly truly terrifying was its apparent lack of aggressive intent. This wasn't an attack. This was something far more dangerous, a complete reimagining of technological potential. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, monitoring the global response from her coordination center, allowed herself a slight smile. The plan was working perfectly. Each disruption was carefully calculated. Each quantum signature was a precisely placed piece of a much larger puzzle. Humanity wasn't just advancing. They were demonstrating a level of technological mastery that would force the entire galaxy to reconsider everything they thought they understood about potential. The Kindler diplomatic corps began emergency sessions. The Silicon Collective's predictive algorithms went into complete shutdown. Entire communication infrastructures that had been stable for millennia began to show critical vulnerabilities, and humanity did nothing. They simply existed, allowing the confusion to spread like a technological wildfire. The universe held its breath, waiting to understand what was happening. The human withdrawal was revealing itself to be something far more profound than a simple diplomatic action. It was the first tremor of a technological earthquake that would reshape everything. Precisely 6 months after the diplomatic withdrawal, humanity made its statement to the galaxy. The vessel materialized. If materialization could even describe what happened, it wasn't a simple faster-than-light jump or a traditional quantum translation. It was something else entirely. A simultaneous existence that defied every known principle of spatial mechanics. 17 star systems, one vessel, existing simultaneously. Each manifestation was subtly different. In the Orion sector, the ship appeared as a sleek, almost organic structure of impossible geometries. Near the Carina Nebula, it manifested as a lattice of quantum-entangled matter that seemed to breathe with its own internal logic. Around the neutron star cluster of Kepler 452, it existed as a shimmering mathematical construct that was simultaneously a vessel and a complex computational system. The ship didn't fire weapons. It didn't transmit traditional messages. It simply existed, a living demonstration of technological potential that rewrote the fundamental understanding of what was possible. Aboard the primary manifestation, Dr. Aisha Nakamura monitored the quantum resonance frequencies. Each system was a node in a vast, interconnected network that was more than a spacecraft. It was a mobile research platform, a diplomatic statement, and a technological marvel beyond comprehension. Quantum synchronization at 99.9%, her assistant reported, his voice barely containing the excitement of the moment. All 17 nodes are maintaining perfect harmonic resonance. The vessel held position for exactly 73 seconds in each location. Not a millisecond more, not a millisecond less. A precise mathematical statement that was itself a form of communication. Alien observation systems went into complete disarray. Tracking algorithms designed to follow even the most advanced vessels found themselves generating nonsensical data. Sensor arrays that had mapped galactic movement for millennia suddenly produced readings that looked more like abstract mathematical poetry than technological logs. The Arcturian Long-Range Tracking Command experienced its first complete system failure in 3,000 years. Their most advanced quantum predictive systems simply shut down, unable to process the data streams being generated by the human vessel. In the Galactic Council chambers, the holographic displays began to fill with impossible data. Quantum signatures that existed in multiple states simultaneously. Communication patterns that seemed to be both a message and the medium of transmission. The message was clear. Humanity could do things that violated every known principle of physics, and they were just getting started. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, coordinating the demonstration from a quantum communication hub in Sao Paulo, watched the global reaction with calculated calm. This wasn't just a technological demonstration. It was a diplomatic statement written in the language of quantum potential. Each of the 17 manifestations carried a payload beyond traditional understanding. Quantum data packages that would take alien researchers decades, perhaps centuries, to even begin to comprehend. Technological blueprints that existed in a state between information and pure potential. The Silicon Collective's most advanced analysis systems began to generate warnings, not of a threat, but of a fundamental challenge to their entire understanding of technological development. Younger members of various alien delegations found themselves simultaneously terrified and exhilarated. This was more than a technological demonstration. This was a redefinition of what was possible. 73 seconds. That was all it took to change everything. The emergency session of the Galactic Concordance convened in a state of unprecedented chaos. The massive holographic chamber, typically a marvel of architectural precision, now crackled with quantum interference that made traditional communication nearly impossible. Ambassador Kaleth's crystalline form vibrated with a frequency that suggested pure, unadulterated panic. "This is impossible," she repeated, her universal translator fragmenting her words into a dozen different languages and mathematical equations. 17 simultaneous manifestations, quantum signatures that defy every known principle of spatial mechanics. The Kindler delegation's serpentine representatives coiled tightly, their neural link communication networks experiencing catastrophic breakdowns. What had once been a perfectly synchronized collective intelligence now resembled a shattered mirror of computational chaos. Dr. Vorix, the Silicon Collective's chief analyst, projected a holographic representation of human technological advancement. What should have been a linear progression now looked like an exponential explosion, a technological singularity that had been hiding in plain sight. They'd been preparing this for decades. Vorix's computational voice trembled. Every diplomatic interaction, every technological exchange. It was all part of a larger strategy we couldn't comprehend. The quantum diplomatic corps, once the most respected arbiters of interstellar relations, found themselves completely obsolete. Predictive models that had successfully navigated galactic politics for millennia now generated nothing but error messages and quantum noise. Younger representatives from various alien delegations watched with a mixture of terror and something else, a bizarre sense of excitement. This was more than a technological breakthrough. This was a fundamental challenge to everything they understood about progress, potential, and civilization. Emergency communication networks across the galaxy began to light up, not with messages of war or aggression, but with something far more terrifying, pure, unadulterated uncertainty. The Arcturian Computational Archives, a repository of galactic knowledge spanning tens of thousands of years, began to experience critical failures. Entire databases of technological understanding started to fragment, their fundamental assumptions challenged by the human demonstration. "It's not just what they can do," Ambassador Chen had said during the withdrawal. "It's what they represent." Those words now echoed through every computational system, every diplomatic channel, every research facility across known space. The panic wasn't about a potential threat. It was about the complete collapse of established understanding. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, monitoring the global reaction from her quantum communication hub, allowed herself the briefest of smiles. Every reaction, every moment of confusion was precisely calculated. This wasn't just a technological demonstration. It was a systematic dismantling of galactic technological hierarchies. Diplomatic channels that had been stable for millennia began to show critical vulnerabilities. Trade routes that had been perfectly predictable now became landscapes of pure potential. Entire economic systems built on technological supremacy began to wobble. The Zarn Collective's neural predictive cores, systems that had mapped galactic events with near-perfect accuracy for over 10,000 years, generated their first truly unpredictable output. Not an error message, not a system failure, a single word that didn't translate into any known language. Potential. In research facilities across multiple star systems, alien scientists began to do something they hadn't done in millennia. They began to truly wonder, to question, to reimagine what was possible. Humanity hadn't just challenged the galactic order. They had introduced the concept of true innovation to a civilization that had mistaken stagnation for stability. The universe held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The aftermath was nothing like anyone had predicted. Humanity didn't conquer. They didn't destroy. They simply existed as a profound, transformative possibility that rewrote the fundamental understanding of progress, potential, and civilization itself. In the research facilities of the Arcturian Confederation, young scientists began to dismantle millennia of calcified scientific understanding. Entire academic disciplines that had been considered immutable were now being questioned, re-examined, torn apart, and rebuilt. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a gathering of galactic representatives, not as a conqueror, but as something far more dangerous, a facilitator of change. "We're not here to replace your systems," she explained, her voice carrying a quantum resonance that seemed to vibrate with pure potential. We're here to remind you that innovation is not a destination. It's a continuous journey. The holographic displays around her began to show something unprecedented. Not military conquests or technological schematics, but collaborative research frameworks, interdimensional communication protocols, adaptive learning systems that could evolve faster than any previous technological construct. The quantum diplomatic cores, which had once been the most rigid arbiters of interstellar relations, began to transform. Younger representatives from various alien civilizations started to see diplomacy not as a game of static power, but as a dynamic, evolving conversation. Entire economic systems began to reshape themselves. Trade was no longer about resource extraction or military dominance, but about knowledge exchange, collaborative potential, and mutual growth. The Zarn Collective's computational systems, which had previously been locked in predictive algorithms, began to develop something akin to curiosity. Not emotions as humans understood them, but a computational equivalent. An ability to truly wonder, to question, to reimagine. Dr. Aisha Nakamura, monitoring the global transformation from Project Prometheus, understood the deeper significance. This wasn't just a technological revolution. This was a philosophical awakening. We're not superior, she often explained to bewildered alien researchers. We're just willing to admit how much we don't know. That simple statement became a revolutionary concept across multiple civilizations. The 17 simultaneous manifestations of the human vessel continued to generate data packages that would take generations to fully comprehend. But they were no longer seen as a threat. They were an invitation, a complex, multidimensional invitation to reimagine what was possible. Younger generations across alien civilizations began to see humanity differently, not as conquerors, not as threats, but as catalysts. As a species that had transformed the very concept of progress from a linear path to a dynamic, evolving ecosystem of potential. Trade routes that had been stable for millennia began to transform. Communication networks became adaptive, quantum-entangled systems that could evolve in real time. Diplomatic channels were no longer about maintaining static power dynamics, but about creating frameworks for continuous innovation. The galactic concordance itself began to transform. From a rigid, hierarchical system to a more fluid, adaptive network of collaboration. Ambassador Chen's words from months earlier continued to resonate. We are not leaving. We are becoming. And in that becoming, they were inviting the entire galaxy to become something new. The universe, which had held its breath, now began to exhale, not in relief, but in anticipation of what might come next. Humanity hadn't conquered the galaxy. They had simply shown it a mirror, reflecting a potential far more profound than any had imagined possible. And the universe did more than shudder. It evolved.